for the policy panel. Again, thank each of you for coming out and being a part of this. And now I would like to introduce to you our Executive Director, Mr. Bill Cosby.
This is awesome. If you guys have been, we have a microphone in. If you guys have been up at the Capitol for any of the past few weeks, you'll know how awesome it is to see a group of friendly folks trying to move the state forward instead of a bunch of unfriendly ones trying to move it backwards. So it's really great to see all of you. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Bill Cosby. I'm the director of the panel, and we facilitate the Citizens First Congress, which is a coalition of 55 communities. Sort of our theory is that the political process works better when y'all are involved, and it doesn't work so great when you're not. And we're going to talk a lot tonight about why that is and how you can be involved and be effective. We're actually a 50-year-old organization, so we've been around a little while doing this work. And the one thing we can tell you without doubt is that policy in Arkansas moves backwards when citizens aren't actively involved pressing it forwards. And you all are really the ones that are responsible for making our state better year after year, and the people who come before you and the folks who are going to come after you. It's what's made Arkansas such a great place to live, and it's what's going to keep moving it forward. And so what we're going to do tonight is, and we're going to have some fun, there will be prizes, there will be questions, so hopefully you'll win something fun. And so I think that that's enough about who I am. I think we have a few handouts. You all have the directory of who's in the legislature. I'm really loud at it. So this is our guide to who's there. So in here you can find your legislator's name, their phone number, their email address, their picture, and then importantly you can see which committees they're on. And Brett on our staff does a great job of making these maps of what each committee looks like. And we're going to talk about why these maps are so important for a little while as well. Can you go ahead and hand out the outline for tonight's session? So I know that training on how the political process works sounds super exciting, right? I mean, I know you all are. So our goal is to make it more exciting than what your worst fear is, and try to make it a little bit fun. And so part of that process is we need you all to divide into teams. It's going to be kind of like a Family Feud political process training, if you can imagine something like that. And so as you divide into teams, those of you that are sitting at a table surrounded completely by your buddies, I would encourage you to get up and move to another table where you don't know somebody. And just kind of mix it up a little bit. Part of the whole point here is to kind of build our network across the state. So mix it up a little bit. real quick. You need to name your group, talk to each other, and then our last team is going to be these three tables here together. So we need y'all to talk to each other, we'll get names.
Alright guys, so we're thinking.
Together, we'll walk next to the other table.
Who's going to tell me?
This is what you get for volunteering if you want to find out the job. You're going to write down the three team names on here because you're going to keep score. And then sometimes these teams can compete against each other and you're going to decide who yelled out first. Okay, so our team over here, what's your all's name?
Dream Changers!
The Dream Changers. No one else had that, right? No. All right, and your all's name is?
The Vipers.
The Vipers. And over here we have? The Bulldog Shakers. I won't show you my rendition. The Dream Changers, the Vipers, and the Bulldog Shakers. Right? Okay. So we're gonna actually start by asking you all a few questions. So this is kind of like Family Feud. So you all, each team needs to nominate one person per question to get up and try to answer the question. I'm going to ask the question, and then whichever team stomps and yells and waves first, and tell me your name, our judge? Savannah's attention first. We'll call on them. They'll get 30 seconds. I got to get my timer out here to confer with the rest of their team about the answer. And then if you win, you get points and you get a prize for each question. And then at the end, the team that wins the most points wins something too. So, and I won't tell you the awesome prizes we have.
I need to be over there.
Okay, so can the Dream Changers nominate somebody for the first question? Need a volunteer for the Dream Changers? There we go. We have our volunteer. Thank you. Do we have a volunteer for the Vipers? Okay, you stand up at that table. And then we have from the Bulldog Shakers, we need one volunteer. Okay, can you stand up? Because Savannah needs to see. So if you think you know the answer to this question, raise your hand, go woo-hoo, and stomp your feet. There you go. Okay. So this first question is for 10 points, and it goes like this. What is lobbying? It's multiple choice. Is it number 1, buying someone an expensive dinner? Is it number 2, telling someone they're an ignorant jerk if they don't do as you say? Is it number 3, trying to convince someone to agree with you? Or number 4, paying someone to vote for your bill? Okay, number 3, that is correct. So the Vipers get 10 points. And you get a bag of oranges. And tell us your name.
Jerica.
Jerica? Nice to see you. So your second question is, there are only, let's see, this is a tough question. So there are 4 sources of political power, is what we say, and only 4. So you can name any of the 4, and you get points. You only get 2 points for the least, not now cheating, no. You get 2 points for the lowest form, and you get 16 points for the highest form. No cheating. Name one. Relationships get 16 points. They got 4 points. 4 points. And the last one. Money is correct. You win a Hot Wheel. Alright, so we got 2 questions. And I'm going to stop. So y'all, the first question is what is lobbying? And really all lobbying is trying to convince somebody to do something. And so if you think about it, every one of you is probably lobbying at least 10 times already today. You lobby to get the front seat of a car on the way here. You lobby to get out of the speeding ticket you got, mayor, whatever he is. You lobby to get a better grade in class. You lobby to let your parents sleep in, or your boyfriend or girlfriend to go to the restaurant you want to go at. So all lobbying is trying to convince somebody to do what you want them to do. And so you're all already really experienced lobbyists. Every one of you knows how to get what you want, right? Some of you may be a little better at it than others, but most of you know how to get generally what you want. That's why you're here, right? So if you think about lobbying, it's really similar to the lobbying at the legislature. It's real similar to what you would do to convince anyone to agree with you. So if you think about it, if you're trying to get your boyfriend to do what you want him to do, does it generally work if you start yelling at him? Or if you write him a 45-page letter, does that work? Or if you tell your mom she's a stupid jerk to get out of your room, effective?
Yes.
So again, lobbying is about basically presenting a good argument and doing it nicely, and because that's what usually works, right? And so, kind of the same rules apply. So think about that as we go through this. So y'all are already experienced lobbyists. You already know how to do this. All we're going to do is tell you some of the little technical glitches to it, but you already are pros. The second question about where the sources of political power are. Lots of folks, when they think about politics, think of it as real intimidating, and they think, especially in the South, that, well, the big money guys have bought it all up, and there's no point, we can't do anything. But the reality is there's only 4 sources of political power, and those 4 sources are available to the corporate lobbyists, and they're available to you. And the one advantage that those corporate guys have, which is money, is actually the lowest form of political power. And the other 3 are information, people, and relationships. And usually the money that the corporate guys spend, they spend on buying those other 3 forms of power that you already have free access to. And so when you develop campaigns or think about your approach towards an issue, it's important to think about building your forms of political power in terms of building relationships with decision makers, building your base of people to move those decision makers, and then having enough information to know what you're talking about. Now, I know a lot of you would never do this, but a lot of the activists that we work with, when they get concerned about an issue, start Googling. And they walk up to the legislature with an encyclopedia of information about the issue, and they hand it to their legislator as though they've unveiled something grandiose. And legislators, at the end of the day, are A, really busy, and B, kind of cracks. I mean, they have a lot coming at them. We're going to talk about why that is, but they don't have really time to digest it. Just like if someone came to you, you'd never met them before, and they handed you a 45-page book about something that you're not terribly interested in. Are you going to read that? And are you going to, even if you're nice enough to read that, are you going to likely feel great about it? And so, again, with lobbying, it's similar. You want to give them, initially one page of information. So you need to know enough to sort of know what you're doing, but you don't need to be the world's greatest expert. You need to know who the world's greatest experts are. So when you get questioned, you can go find them and bring that to the table. But you don't need to be the world's greatest expert. So that's the kind of the two initial points. I'm going to go on here. Y'all ready for another question? Do we have some more players volunteer from our 3 teams?
Can I volunteer someone?
No volunteering anyone. We have volunteers? If you've already won something, you should give someone else a chance. Okay, are you ready? Okay. This is another multiple choice question. For 10 points, who do legislators listen the most to? Is it number 1, lobbyists? Number 2, large numbers of voters they trust? Number 3, their mom? Or number 4, Fox News? Number 2, large numbers of voters they trust. Absolutely. The biggest So the point there is that and we'll talk a little bit more about this again, but legislators tend to listen to people who actually vote for them. So if you live in Little Rock, a legislator that represents Fayetteville is not likely to listen a lot to what you have to say. Or if you live in Monticello, your legislator probably doesn't care what folks in Jonesboro say, because legislators tend to listen to people who vote for them. And so when you think about your strategy, finding those people who actually can vote for these legislators to be on your side is really important. Okay, we're ready for another question? Volunteers? We see 1 volunteer. Get some more volunteers over here. All right. Do we need one from the Vipers? Yeah. Do we need one from the Vipers? Okay. For 5 points, you have to complete this law of policy physics. A law in motion tends to stay in motion. A law at rest tends to... Stay at rest. See, now you know why we have a judge. Who won that? Over here, they won that. Okay, so they get 5 points, and they win a can of green boiled peanuts. I've never had one. So the point there is that things aren't going to change unless you make them change, right? You all already knew that, but sometimes it's important to remember that. Okay, we need one more set of players. Okay. Are we ready? Yeah. All right. So this is our last question before we kind of jump more into the workshop. So here it is. It's another multiple choice one. Good lobbyists for 10 points. Either 1, know that they are always right. Number 2, get angry and yell when things don't go their way. Number 3, can recite an encyclopedia backwards. Number 4, insult people very cleverly. And number 5, have fun and don't take themselves too seriously. Our judges rule.
I heard you squeak.
Which one is it? Number 5, that's right. How about 100 flexible straws? So the point here, this one is actually really fun. A lot of times when we're really passionate about an issue, we get really intense about it, right? And we know that we're right, and it's really frustrating when not everybody else agrees with us. And we work really hard at it, and we get a little tired, and we get a little cranky, and we start to think that the whole world's against us, and we're never going to win, and everything sucks. And that's not a really effective attitude to go sell your idea. And so the folks who are the most effective at lobbying are people who don't take themselves too seriously, can laugh at themselves, who, understand kind of the gravity of the situation, but can still have fun in it. And if you can just sort of relax and, be yourself and just be a genuine person. Because if you think about it, anybody who ever comes to you who is dogmatically rigid, knows they're right, they're not very good at changing your mind. And you're not going to be very good at changing anyone else's mind if you're like that. And so, a lot of times as activists, we get a little bit like that. We get a little self-righteous, we get a little angry, we get a little whatever, and I totally get all that. I get all those things myself. But it's not always helpful. And so to be the most effective, you kind of need to be able to relax and just sort of have fun with it. Again, it's a crazy process. And you'll see, if you haven't ever been up there yet, you'll see tomorrow morning. It's an insane process. My wife went up there with me once, and she was completely dismayed, and at the end of it she said, is this really the best that we can do? Because it's really chaotic, and she's kind of a structured person. And the truth is, yeah, pretty much it's kind of the best that we can do. If you look around the world, there's a parliamentary system which is even more chaotic, but it's not great, it's messy, it's ugly, it's lots of things, but it seems to be about the best that we're capable of. And again, for years and years we've wanted to be successful in it. And so you can be successful, but you have to sort of know the process. And so that's what we're gonna talk about. So there's gonna be some more questions, but they're gonna be interwoven into the rest of this document here. So I think, let me think about it. Do you mind staying here the whole time?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, because as we get to the questions, we're gonna need the judge. And if you're over there, it's gonna be a hassle. Do y'all mind lending your teammate over here to us as a judge? Is that okay? Now, Leah, what did we just talk about?
Listen here. Listen. Real time.
All right. I know one person at least came in while we were gone, which is John Whiteside, who's our policy director. He's actually our lead lobbyist. So, John, say and anyone else that we missed? So, is this going okay so far? I mean, it's a game. You're winning stuff. This isn't too bad, right? Okay. So, does everybody have a copy of this? Did anybody miss this when you got up and shuffled? This is going to be kind of what we're going to follow along with tonight. Okay, so if you look at the front, the front page has got the 2-second version, right? And this is what we just went over. First of all, you're an experienced lobbyist. Second of all, there are only 4 sources of political power you can use them. Number 3 is relationships are the engines of politics. Build good ones, and great listening equals good lobbying.
You guys are doing very well.
The 4th is people participate in what they create, and you need their participation to win. Remember, we talked about people are your second most important form of influence, and the people who vote for legislators are the best thing to move a legislator. So you need those people. And one thing that's weird about us humans is when it's somebody else doing something, even if we think it's great, we say, man, I'm really glad that Sally's doing that. And we watch Sally do it from afar. We tell Sally, man, I'll be there Tuesday night, you bet. And then when Tuesday night comes, we're tired, we got a phone call before we get some homework, and we just don't quite make it there Tuesday night. And Sally ends up somewhere where she thought 30 of her friends were going to be, and it's Sally and her 2 best buds. And that's how a lot of us activists, again, go about this work. And it's really important that we keep everybody engaged in mean involved in actually driving the process, because that's why Sally's going to show up, because Sally feels ownership for it. It's not Sally's, that's why Sally's friend's going to show up, because it's not Sally's thing, it's Sally's friend's thing. So when it's up, when you make it your folks' campaign, then they'll be there when you need them to be there. When it's your campaign that your folks are supporting, they're not going to be there when you need them. And so again, we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go on. The fifth thing is not much changes unless you make a change. We talked about that. And 6, try to have fun and don't get too bent out of shape. There's this 2-minute version. I'm just going to skip that. So here's the details. And we already talked about you're already an expert lobbyist, so I'm going to skip that. So we often get asked this question, what is public policy? And I'm a geek, so I insisted to my staff that we stick a picture of Yoda in here. Because policy really is all around you. If you think about it, public policy affects the electricity coming out of the light bulbs up there. It affects the safety of the chairs you're sitting on. It affected the safety of the food you just ate. It affected how much you paid on the McDonald's drink on your table. It affected how the clothes you're wearing got labeled. It affects how fast you drove over here. It affects the classes that you take in school. It affects really almost every aspect of your life. And so, there's lots of things in policy to deal with, but in terms of what is public policy, pretty much, everything. And so, in the legislature, state legislature can have a big impact over a big part of that. And so, some folks say that policy is the outcome of the struggle over who gets what. And if you think of that in terms of the Arkansas context, who gets what in the state is pretty lopsided. We have the second most regressive tax code in the country, where poor people here pay over twice the tax rate that wealthy folks pay. And John and I just came from a meeting where industrials are trying to gut your drinking water standards and to allow more industrial pollution. Those types of things are going on, and because the interests from those groups are involved in policy making, and we aren't. And so that's why what you're doing is so critically important, because you all represent the public interest. And you can do it. So how well you are represented in the public policy process really depends on determines the quality of the policy that you get. So let's keep moving here. So the primary role of government over here. So people ask, well, why do we need a government? And really, a government's meant to do your will. It's meant to represent you. And we have kind of these elaborate systems, and again, it's messy and whatever. But this gets to our next question. So we need a volunteer from each team who hasn't read down the page yet. Any volunteers? We're playing another question here. And this question's worth 10 points. Anybody stand up? Volunteers? Volunteers? Come on. Okay. We need a, there we go. All right, we have 1, 2, 3. All right. So who can name the 3 branches of government for 10 points? Okay, over here. 3 branches of government.
Executive, judicial, legislative.
There you go, yeah! A lot of something back it's clearly wrong. We think, well, we need to get a lawyer and we should sue. And the reality is that judges can only enforce the laws that we have. And so if the law is not strong enough to begin with, something can be totally wrong, and the judge could be still unable to do anything about it. The original law has to be there. And so that's the legislature's job, and that's what you all are going to be helping us do tomorrow, is lobby at the legislature. So the legislature creates the laws. The executive branch is who takes the legislative laws and implements them through state agencies. So the executive controls the Department of Education, controls the Department of Environmental Quality, Department of Human Services, so on and so forth. And those are the state agencies in charge of enforcing the law, state police, etc. And then the judiciary is who interprets the law and is the finder of fact when there's disputes. So the judiciary interprets the law. I think this law is constitutional or not constitutional, and they're a finder of fact. The cop says you were doing 75 miles an hour, you say you're doing 65 miles an hour. You have a hearing, the judge decides who's right, usually not you. And so those are the three branches. So it's important to remember because really a lot of the folks, again, they think, well, this is so clearly wrong that I'm going to sue. Or another thing that people get really confused about is there's a federal Congress in Washington, D.C., and there's a state Congress. I can't tell you how many times I ask people, do you know who your state senator is? They say, oh yeah, that's Bozeman and Pryor. And they're sort of right. Bozeman and Pryor are their U.S. senators. And so if it relates to state law, say like the DREAM Act at the state level, writing Bozeman and Pryor asking them to enact an Arkansas DREAM Act, they can't do. They can enact a U.S. DREAM Act because they're members of the U.S. Congress. Or, on the bills that we were working on, John and I were a little bit late because we were in the last hour meeting about these bad water bills that were coming down the pipe. Someone could write Senator Pryor and say, please vote against House Bill 1908 or whatever the bill is that guts water standards. The reality is he could totally agree with you and he can't do anything about it because it's the state legislature. So being clear, one of the things we're going to get into is one of the ways to be effective is to know exactly who your targets are. And that, first of all, includes knowing the difference between state law and federal law, what's judiciary, executive, or legislative. But then we're going to get into, you can target that even more. Okay, let's see, I need to move to our next question. Can we get a volunteer again? Sure. Come on, we need one from each group. Don't be shy. You're going to win something cool potentially. Norita. Come on, you can win some royal peanuts. All right. So this question is for 10 points. And the question is, how many Arkansas state legislators are there? How many? 35 is not correct. Not 93. 130. How about a package of hot tamales? So you're right, there are 35 senators, and then there's 100 members of the House. And so that's important to remember because if you want to pass a bill, you need to get a majority out of the 35-member House, which is 18 votes, and then you need a majority out of the House, which is 51 votes. So y'all clear on that? Yes. So, and remember, these legislators' job is to represent people in their district. So, it's in gray, so it's really hard to see, but there's a map of the Arkansas legislature of the Senate on your flyer. Do y'all see that? So, if you have these in color, pull this out and pull to the center page here. You'll see something in color. Do you see these colored maps inside here? So each colored spot represents a legislative district. And this is what we were talking about earlier. The person in this green spot down here, which looks like it's House District 6, they don't care what someone in Fayetteville says. So when you think about your strategy, your group in Fayetteville can have 10,000 members and be the baddest group in Fayetteville it ever was. And you can still get one House member to vote for you and one senator to vote for you. Congratulations. And so it's great, but if you want to pass a bill, this is a map of the House, you would need 51 of these colored spots to vote with you on a bill. And then if you look at the Senate map, which are a little further back in the book, these are a little bigger areas because there's only 35 of them, but you need 18 of these areas. So one of the whole points of our coalition of 55-member groups is to pass a bill, you need friends. And that's why meetings like this are so important. You need allies because no organization has membership all over the place. Very few organizations have membership all over the place. And so you have to sometimes call on allies to help you out where you're meeting. And sometimes you have to help other allies out where they are. And so the understanding this principle of finding people who can vote for a legislator or to talk to that legislator is really critical. And so tomorrow afternoon, for those of you that stick long enough, we'll help you find your legislator and talk to them. And again, it's so important because you're the one that vote. You represent their constituents back home. And you can talk to them like nobody else. When you all go and speak to a legislator, you're more effective than lobbyists. The lobbyists are up there more often, but you actually represent who can, I put you there and I can take you out kind of a thing, although we never say that. But they sort of know that in the back of their mind. All right, I'm going to keep moving here. So here's how, one last question here. So we need one more volunteer from each group. This will be a good prize, I We're going to have to get a law passed to get some volunteers out there. Okay. Are we ready? Here's the question. Whoa, look at that. Here's the question. How often does the legislature meet? Every 2 years in regular session. That is correct. And you win 5 points. And so that answer actually recently became more complicated. Well, there'll be more questions. The legislature used to only meet every other year, rock solid answer. A couple of years ago, we passed a new amendment, so now the legislature meets in even years to do a fiscal session where they just do a state budget. So we still don't count that as a regular session, and then they meet every odd year to do a regular session. And so that's what we're in right now. And so a little bit about how this process works. So I want you to imagine for a minute, the Arkansas legislature, they're mostly volunteers. They get paid a pittance, and then some of them kind of work the reimbursement system pretty hard. So generally they're making about $15,000 a year. Some of them that are working the system hard may get it up to like $40,000. But a lot of them have other jobs. So they're still a teacher, they're still a lawyer, they're still a banker, they're still whatever they were before they got elected. And they're still trying to do that job. They are mostly not from Little Rock, so a lot of them are 1, 2, 3 hours from home. They're here for 90 days every other year. And in those 90 days, they're going to consider about 3,000 pieces of legislation. Do we have a final count of how many have been filed this session?
I don't. I know that 695 were filed last Monday.
Yeah, the last day of the session, 695 bills are filed. So I want you to picture this for a minute. You're about 2 or 3 hours from home. You're only here for 3 months. You're still trying to do your job from far away. You still got a family, presumably, somewhere else. You have 3,000 pieces of legislation coming at you. And then there's a whole bunch of lobbyists chasing you around the halls. Does that sound fun? So it's a really intense process. And so one of the things to think about is, first of all, they don't read all of the bills. Most of them tell you they read all the bills. They don't read all the bills. But what they do is they listen to folks who they trust to tell them what's in the bills. And so if you can become one of those people that they trust, it helps you. Or if you can find out who the people that legislator trusts, that can help you. But if you think about the process, it's incredibly intense. It's only 90 days every other year, 3,000 bills. By the way, you got a job and a family far away. So one of the things that we always encourage, and it's late for this session to think about, but I know that some of your groups were doing this, is really incredible or important to build relationships with these legislators before the session starts. During the election, and then during the interim period before the session starts, and then even after the session ends, because they'll presumably be back again. And so a lot of times during this 90-day period of the session is not the best time to go build. We say relationship building is the most important part of politics, which is true, but now is not the best time to build a relationship because they're so kind of underwater. So now is the best time for your one page of talking points and for you to find the people who already have relationships with that legislator. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the House, there's 100 members. They're elected by a portion of the population. They serve 2-year terms, and there's a 3-term term limit. So if you think about that for a second, a member of the House only goes through 3 regular sessions in their whole career. They don't even know where all the bathrooms are by the end of the 3rd session. Frankly, some of us who've been there for a long time still don't know where all the bathrooms are. But the term limits in Arkansas are incredibly short. So again, sometimes folks think of legislators as sort of these learned bodies of experts, and they're these legal regals, and they're intimidated by that. That's not the Arkansas, that's not most legislators. What they are is that they're people who care a lot. I think we have a lot of respect for every legislator, and I think all of them are genuinely coming from a place of trying to do what they think is the right thing. But not all of them are expert on every area of policy. Not all of them are legal experts. Mostly they're fairly regular folks. And so, again, when you think about your lobbying strategy, treating them like somebody that you would relate to is the best way, because they appreciate that, because they have so many people coming at them all the time that if you show them a little bit of humanity and just kind of treat them like a person. Now, there are people with slightly bigger egos, so you have to deal with that. But generally, they're not, not a brain trust up there. And I don't mean that negatively, but it's just the way that it is. And so, but understanding that process is really important. Now, the bills are then broken into committees. And so for this, we have another question, and I'm going to ask for another volunteer. And this one's tough. There are 2 ways to win this question. One way's easy and one way's hard, so don't sit down.
Too late now.
You can do the easier. We need a volunteer over here with the Dream Changers. And we got a bulldog shaker. Thank you. Okay. So there are 2 ways to win this question. You can either, for 15 points, name all 4 steps that a bill has to be voted on to get enacted into law. Or you can, if no one can do that, then I'll read you a multiple choice and you can name the step that's out of place. So can anybody for 15 points name, there's 4 votes that a bill has to have to become law. Does anybody can name all 4 votes? Should I set the timer? We got an answer? We think we have an answer. From the Dream Changers. They thought they had an answer.
Hey, right here.
Yay! You win a dinosaur. So remember, there's 135 legislators, right? But what we just said is the bill starts in committee. So the bill, if it's introduced in the House, will go to a House committee, then to the floor of the House, and then over to the Senate. And if it starts in the Senate, it'll go to the Senate. Now the thing is, if you look at these maps in here, these are maps of committees. And if you look at each of these in the House, there's only 20 members of the committee. So now instead of having to get 51 votes in the House, you only have to get 11 votes in the committee. It seems a little more manageable, right? So understanding the process of which committee your bill is going to go through and who's on that committee is absolutely essential. Because generally, things that come out of committee in good shape are in pretty good shape once they get to the floor. So let's take an imaginary bill. Let's say we're working on a bill to improve election laws in Arkansas. So which committee is that going to start in, John? Our election law bill. Which committees are election law bill in? Senate, State agencies. So that bill we introduced in the Senate. So if you look at, hey Brett, note to self, page numbers on this.
There are page numbers.
There are. I see it. Yay. Way up in the top. There we go. It's actually the back page. Page 40. Everybody find page 40? 40 here? Page 40. This is the Senate State Agencies Committee. So our bills to reform election laws in Arkansas have to pass this committee. There's 8 senators in this committee, and we need 5 to get out of committee. So when we thought about our strategy, we thought which 5 of these legislators could we get, and by thinking of that, we thought who do we know that live in these 5 areas. After it gets out of this committee, it goes to the floor of the Senate. So then we have 35 votes to worry about. And then it goes over to the House State Agencies Committee, which is on page, give me 1 second. State Agencies, page 19. Can you find page 19? There's 20 members of this committee, and you need 11 to win. So really when it starts out with 135 legislators and you're thinking you need 69 of them to win your bill, that's true, but your first step is either 11 votes in the House committee or 5 votes in the Senate committee. So you can target and save yourself a lot of energy on that. So the DREAM Act is going through which committee? Anyone know? It's going through the Education Committee. So you can look in here and find who's on the Education Committee and figure out who you know that knows those folks. The Civil Rights Commission would probably go through the Judiciary Committee, I presume, or state agencies, so you would do that. You could find the Judiciary or State Agencies Committee. The water bills that we were talking about just a little while ago, one of them is going through the Agriculture Committee and the other is going through the Public Health Committee. The wage staff bill that we're working on is going to go through the Public Health, Welfare, and Labor Committee. So y'all getting a sense how to use the book? Okay. So let me tell you how the process really works. And for this, we have another question. So can we get one more volunteer from everywhere?